Bizarre Brain Comics. Star Trekking across the universe on the Starship Enterprise under Captain Kirk. Okay. Hello, Gary here for Bizarre Brain Comics. This is where I like to take a look at some older comics, examine the characters, take a look at the characters and the creators, and then examine the stories and the art. Well, today I want to re-examine or take another examination of an old friend. Star Trek from Gold Key. This is Star Trek 26 from Gold Key Comics from 1975. Yeah, from 1975. But it is reprinting the story from Star Trek number 1 from 1967. Yeah, 1967. So we can take a little look at the one Gold Key artist who drew Star Trek that I haven't looked at yet. And this is the man who has the distinct honor of being the first person to draw a Star Trek comic book. There we go. Okay. This is the Gold Key Star Trek number 29, 1975. Reprinting Star Trek number 1 from 1967. It is written by Dick Wood and drawn by Nevio Zeccara. I hope I pronounced that right. And Dick Wood was an American comic book writer. I couldn't find his dates on him. He's an American comic book writer who wrote on The Claw, Crime Does Not Pay, Batman, Green Arrow, some of the DC War comics and DC Mystery comics. He even wrote for Airboy, Mandrake the Magician, and a host of other titles for Gold Key, including Star Trek. That's about all I could find about him. And then we take a look at Nevio Zeccara. He's from 1924 to 2005. He was an Italian-born artist. And he started working in 1952 doing aviation and fantasy stories for the Italian market. In the 60s, he did some erotic comics. And for the American market, he did a variety of work for Gold Key, such as Star Trek, and other work for the British market. Now, I've seen some of the other Gold Key books, like some of the flying saucer UFO stuff, and I know I've seen some others. I just can't think of off the top of my head. Probably some of the mystery stories he had drawn. So then in the 70s and 80s, he was back to doing work for the Italian market. So he was probably probably better known in Europe than he was here. So, let us beam aboard this Starship Enterprise for their first comic book mission in Star Trek. Star Trekking across the universe on the Starship Enterprise under Captain Kirk. Star Trekking across the universe. Okay, here we are. Star Trek 29, and you can see the full cover painting. And I think painting was done for this particular issue, because I think the earliest comics, especially the first issue, I think was a photo collage cover. That was fairly common for the first earliest issues, and that was common for all their TV tie-in books, photo collage. But it was still a nice painting. His here, K2, Planet of Death, where cannibal plants stalk animal prey. And they have the photos of our two actors there at the beginning. And of course, Gold Key had the Star Trek license for many years. Wasn't until shortly before the Star Trek the Motion Picture came out that I think they lost the license, and with the motion picture it went to Marvel. And somewhere around this time, probably in the late 70s, they published several large trade paperbacks, fat trade paperbacks that reprinted. I think it was reprinting all the stories that Gold Key had produced. I think it was all the stories. I'm not sure. It's 4 volumes, because they were involved in a lot of reprinted stuff. So let's take a look. And here we go. The Planet of No Return, and splash page to give you a little more interested in the story. Let's get into it. Get into the story. Very simple, standard 6-panel basic page layout with modifications. It's almost a big old splash panel there. Now, one thing that's interesting is that these early Star Trek stories actually bear very little resemblance to Star Trek stories. The Dick Wood, and it's not entirely his fault. He was probably working in a vacuum. Had to they were very ignorant of Star Trek stuff, but this was at the very beginning of the Star Trek lore, and they probably didn't have a good grasp. Some of the stuff hadn't even been really finalized yet in the series, but there's some just very basic mistakes that, considering Dick Wood, and as well as our Italian artist, had undoubtedly never seen Star Trek, because it was brand new, working with photographs and probably a description of how the stories would work. And because it does have the captain's log stuff, and it says, as we're on our mission. We're exploring through Galaxy Alpha. Well, they're not going intergalactic, so I think it's probably means solar system. There's a lot, especially back then, and even today, a lot of people are ignorant of the difference between a solar system and a galaxy. And there's something's coming up on their scanners. They're looking at this planet for some life signs. Well, it's all green, Kelly green. Must be some kind of life down there. We're going to go down and have a picnic. Yeah. Attention crew, we're going to dispatch an exploration party. Make necessary preparations. When Kirk would have just said landing party. But see, he has some nice artwork. I mean, that's a good job, admirable job on the Enterprise, because the Enterprise is not easy to draw. It looks like it would be, but it's not as easy as it looks. Now they're zipping around in orbit through the upper atmosphere in the clouds. And not through the clouds, but some mist. Now there's some little space spores got on board, and they managed to get through. It's a really good resemblance here. The artwork of McCoy and Spock. And suddenly it's going on, and what the heck? These giant planets are suddenly sprouting and going crazy, and they're attacking the lab animals and the technicians there. Call security that comes in and starts zapping away. Zap, 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 zap. Destroy all the plants. Now they want to conduct an investigation, see what's going on. So, reporting to Captain Kirk. And then here, another really good resemblance of Spock. And even though it's in profile, that's a good resemblance to McCoy. There they are. Of course, the background is not, well, imaginative, and little snippets that look like they actually came from photos from the show. And of course, it has the imaginative pseudo technology background stuff that is common. And I will say though that the backgrounds don't look quite as ship-like by Zeccara as it later would with Alberto Giolitti. So they're going to beam down because they're talking. What's the alien spores? Yeah, they're there, and it's the teleportation chamber. It's a transporter, and of course it doesn't look anything like transporter room from the show. They beam down to the planet, and they are wearing spacesuits with backpacks. Backpacks I got no problem with. They would sometimes wear that. They would have excursion jackets in the pilot, and then later in the movies. But they didn't here. And actually, it kind of makes sense, but I don't know why they decided to do that. Put them in spacesuits to go onto the planet when that is not common. Even the first few episodes, they didn't do that, and they wouldn't have had any photographs, photo reference from the show with them in spacesuits like this. Now Zeccara is a quite competent artist, and it's kind of an appealing style, ever so bit slightly. It has kind of a European cartoonish style to it. Just a hint, And here they are on the planet, seeing this. All I see is plants. Oh, I skipped where they were attacked by the. I skipped a couple pages where they were attacked. They're on there. One of the red shirts gets attacked by the spores, and he's transforming into a plant. Meanwhile, this other plant, it's like a giant Venus flytrap, is trying to suck them in. Wants to eat them. So everything's getting sucked into the plant. They're hanging on for dear life, and then suddenly there's this other big plant attacking that plant and destroying it, and then flop, wham, wham, and then falls down dead. And it turns out that that tree plant was the crewman, the red shirt, who was being transformed. He still had enough presence of mind to aid his shipmates before he died. So now they're really on their guard and cautious. Kirk is reporting back to the Enterprise. Spock can come in, another good. And that's from a recognizable photograph. And here they are. They feel like it's a community. They're a community of plants. They have huts. They move around, and now they're being attacked because oh my gosh. So they pull out their phasers and zap away. Of course, they call them like ray guns, and or lasers. And later on, they call the ship's phasers lasers. And I think somewhere in here they mentioned like the engines were just like rockets, and no warp drive. All the jargon that we are used to from Star Trek is not here. And they're trapped, being attacked again, by more plants, and then we go into the second part, and I gotta stick it up here. They're put into a corral with some other animals. The plants are crawling animals, and then they use these animals, of course, as food. And that's what they intend to do with the crew too. But Kirk and them, they'd gotten away, but Janice Rand, she was captured, and she's in the here she is in the corral with the animals, with the other animals, and this is where they see that they're being used as food. It's good storytelling, visual storytelling technique. Here's another real good image of the Enterprise. So I was able to do some good technical stuff like that. And they've got Kirk has a plan. They're going to get Janice out of there because they can't zap through the corral itself because it grows back too fast. That's for their hand phasers. So they're about to get Janice. Kirk has gotten Spock. This is pretty good, relatively dynamic image here as the Enterprise zaps the corral so that they can get through. And of course, they use their ship's laser beams, and they get through to rescue Janice. Get Janice, and then there's a real good image of Kirk, and then they get beamed back up into the teleportation chamber, or sometimes they call it materialization chamber in the early stories. And then now this is really out of character here because they're all safe. They're back on the Enterprise, and then they have, as the Enterprise orbits, has the ship's weapons bearing down and destroying all the plant life on the planet. Now that's very out of character. Don't know why they would do that. So it has some nice artwork. I mean, it's very naive for Star Trek type work. And then contrast that with later comic stories from Gold Key, when the writers, I guess Len Wein was a frequent writer later on, and obviously knew something about the Star Trek. When they got better, the phasers, all the stuff was better. They made occasionally made references to events that happened on the show. So they worked with some continuity. It worked better that way, when you know what the heck you're talking about. It's all of the Gold Key Star Trek were done in very naive fashion, but they're still a lot of fun to read. And I don't denigrate the writers or the artists at all. I think they did some decent work. It's just naive, and for the most part, and especially looking back now on decades of continuity and lore, which they did not have when they did this. And you can bet the editorial at Gold Key didn't care, as long as Desilu and Paramount signed off on it, that'd be okay. And obviously, at this point in time, Paramount probably was not paying any attention to what they were doing in the comics. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Compare that to later stuff with the later Marvel and DC, especially the DC's, when DC had the license. I mean, they took great pains for continuity. There's much better Star Trek type stories, because these here in Gold Key, there's just space adventures with little or no social commentary and character development. So that is our little warpy voyage through the galaxy with Captain Kirk and company. And thank you for joining me. Please like, share, subscribe. Share it with your other Star Trekky friends. And comment. Remember, comics are art. Badia. That's all, folks.